Hello, friends and folks, and welcome back to Neutral Game, your newbie-friendly fighting game podcast. I'm Six Detmar of Scanline Media.
And I'm Kyrie Page of Scanline Media. And
we are, oh, go, no, please.
We're so back.
Yeah, we're refiring the feed. Obviously, anyone who knows your Neutral Game history, there have been a couple of episodes with Kyrie and I, but for the most part, this has been a podcast that is me and Mia Drog, talking, like, focusing on a single fighting game and talking about it, sometimes specific topics. We've had a couple of guests. Mm-hmm. It's been very good fun. And then we both got very busy and also are in completely different time zones, like Europe versus West Coast of the United States. And it's just like, plus, Mia Drog's making a video game,
yes,
which takes a lot of time, and then also streaming, which takes a lot of time, and I'm doing a million other podcasts, which take a lot of time.
And it turns out I am also doing a bunch of podcasts, but it is way easier to sync up West Coast and East Coast.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And also, I think, honestly, if you took all of our responsibilities, like if you take our jobs and our podcasting and like work on the site, it still wouldn't be as much as just Mia Drog's day job, let alone the streaming that they also do on top of it.
Yeah, Mia is absolutely a trooper.
A hustler, as hustler as in like, hard worker, not as in scamming people, to be clear.
Yes.
A hustler as long as I've known them. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Just out there doing it. But we couldn't let this feed lie any longer because we have a private Discord, and a lot of what happens there is just fighting games, right?
That's out
most of what we get up to.
Yeah, if it's like, oh, we just want to hang out, it's like, well, time to boot up, just boot up a fighting game that we both have, and it turns out we both have a lot of the same fighting games.
Yeah. And so we wanted an avenue by which to talk about them. And we hit up Mia Drog, and as is my way, I'm like, hey, just, checking, no is totally fine. How would you feel? He's like, of course that's fine. What are you talking about? Of course, go for it. So we're back, and we're here to talk about fighting games again. Expect more episodes, where we're starting with the hot topic. That's right, the place you buy good shirts.
That is... Okay, you say that? I bought a Street Fighter shirt from Hot Topic once.
Wow. I didn't buy a Street Fighter shirt, but I did buy Kakashi from Naruto.
Hell yeah.
But, like, behind him was the text from The Matrix.
Oh, hell yeah. That is, like... Of a time that you look upon that shirt, it's like, yes, you can dissect it like a great oak tree. I mean, like, I know exactly the time and place in which every element was here.
Kakashi, not yet a crossover character in Street Fighter 6.
It's your Street Fighter. They made one just for you.
It's my Street Fighter.
Yeah.
This is my war.
Mm-hmm. Street Fighter 6.
64.
64. No.
Apologies for the quick reference. This is an in-joke in our friend group. I think even people that play a lot of Street Fighter 4 probably won't be this bad-brained about it. There's a really stupid song. So Ultra Street Fighter 4 added a stage that is a skating half-pipe.
Yeah.
And the song is a dynamically changing song called This Is Our War Street Fighter 4. And it's just bad.
It's just that bar over and over again.
Well, the thing is, it is dynamic. As health gets lower, the lyrics do change a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was one of the, like, when Ultra 4 came out, they wanted to, like, use some of the work they had already done on Cross Tekken and ported it over.
Because, boy, Street Fighter is a series with some weird history, isn't it?
Oh yeah, for sure.
So we're not going to read a Wikipedia article to you. We're going to talk about what's relevant to us, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, that starts with Street Fighter 2. And playing Street Fighter 2 on a SNES and being like, this is dumb, I don't get it.
I think I had maybe played that version as well, like, either at someone's house or something, but it was like... It would take a while for fighting games to hook me. I was not hooked by 2. Now I have an appreciation for 2, but
Can I be honest? Is this a safe space?
This is always a safe space, Six Detmar.
So, I got in with later games. I now am probably, if you don't know people who are like playing competitively, I'm probably one of the most fighting game enthusiast people you know, for anyone out there. I still think 2 is kind of stupid and bad. It's very important. It's very influential. I don't think it's fun.
There is some fun to be had, but mostly in the way of like the low level at which I play it at. Like I tried watching a little bit of like high level Super Turbo at one point, and like man, that game is sometimes just dog doo doo ass, but in like a really like sometimes in a fun way. Like I don't know. I have an okay memory of like Street Fighter 2, mostly from occasionally going to because of how simple it is. I would, whenever I would go to MagFest, every now and again I would see a Super Turbo cabinet. I remember getting into this like protracted like back and forth bout with this Balrog player, and I just switched to Dalsim at one point and was like, oh, I'm getting way more success. I barely know how to play Dalsim. I've never played Dalsim in any other game, but it was like, oh, long stretchy limb punch.
Oh, Fierce Punch?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh,
Fierce Punch? Yeah. Against a
so,
guy
okay.
with a fireball? Huh. Go ahead.
For both of us, 2 was a thing we touched, but it wasn't what convinced us, right? So what got you in?
It was a combination of one, I really got into Alpha 3, mostly by way of like a friend of mine knew I was kind of interested in fighting games because I had played like I started getting interested in the genre by way of like Guilty Gear. And me and this friend, we had PSPs, and he was like, well, I'm not having a lot of fun with the Street Fighter Alpha 3 Max like game, so he just gave it to me for free.
Can I call a shot?
Sure.
Did you try to be an Ingrid main and then had to be like, she's really cool, but this doesn't work for me?
Yeah. Okay, I mostly messed with like Ken because it was like, oh, okay, now it's like, okay, now I kind of understand how the street fight goes. I would jump around the roster a little bit. Again, I have a lot of like happy memories like associated with that game. Like I remember getting at another convention at Anime USA one year. Me and this one guy found a PS2 running that version of Alpha 3, and again just going into like a first to 5 of Ryu versus Ken, and we were super evenly matched. It was a lot of fun.
Nice.
But I mean, I was still very much like a casual, I was just sort of like, oh, it's fun to like do these specials, do these supers, and I really didn't super get it yet.
And 4 was the one that made it click?
4 was absolutely the one that made it click. So for me, like, I had played Street Fighter 4 in college. Again, still at this casual level. But then a couple years later, I would move to Japan. And I probably was in the ideal environment to really get invested in a fighting game when there was an arcade about 15 minutes, like a 15-minute bike ride away from where I was living, that I would just go, that was open 24/7, and there was almost always people there at the Ultra 4 machine. And I tell you, like, actually going to a group of people who are playing this game regularly in Japan, like, you will just get better, or you have to if you want to like stay afloat.
If you want to play.
If you want to fucking play. I gotta tell you, I lost about, like, so you get these, like, RFID cards at Japanese arcades that actually keep track.
Oh, yeah, I was always envious. Those seemed really cool.
They're really cool. I unfortunately lost mine. Like, yeah, I wish I still had it. I feel bad. But, like, what I did was you go it and you would scan it in the machine, and it would remember your, like, character preferences. It would remember your costume preferences, that sort of thing. And it kept track of your win and loss rate. And it took me 100 matches before I started posting my first win. But I gotta tell you, when I got that first win against, like, I think it was against a Makoto player, who just always could wipe the floor with me, like, getting that first match, I mean, like, I was the only, like, American at that, like, group, and it was, like, being able to, like, fight back. It was like, oh shit, this feels incredible. I love fighting games now.
Yeah. That sounds pretty cool. I also pretty stressful in the beginning of just like, you keep your spirits up as best you can, but 100 beatdowns is a lot of beatdowns.
It is. It's 100 yen a play, so, do the math.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
For me, so bounce off of Street Fighter 2. And then I was also a college student, and Street Fighter 4 came out, and I was like, okay, this seems kind of neat, actually. But, whatever. And then they announced Super Street Fighter 4, and they announced that it was going to launch at, I forget if it was $30 or $40.
40,
right?
I think.
That sounds probably more accurate. But it was launching not at full retail, even though it was a, full retail game. And I was a poor college student trying to play as many games as I could. And I was like, it's launching at $40. I'd be a fucking idiot not to buy.
Yeah.
And there was a local independent game store that I was a regular of, to the point that they had demo stations, but they were demo stations they set up themselves, right? They would just like, okay, here's the disc we're going to put in today. And they would be like, and I'm sure some other people, they'd be like, hey, if you want to try something, just let us know. I was like, yeah, let me try Street Fighter 4. And I played some, and I was like, I don't think I totally get it, but this seems pretty cool. Yeah, I'll get Super Street Fighter 4 day and date. And I was having some fun with that. But this was also the era where people cared about things like trophies and achievements, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Street Fighter 4, or Super Street Fighter 4, had an achievement called Sea to Shining Sea. Are you familiar with this?
I think I am, but you're going to have to refresh my memory.
It basically, it says reach C rank in online matches with every character. Up to C rank, you cannot lose ranked points. If you lose, you just don't gain anything. And so it is an inevitability if you play enough that you'll get there, right? And I was like, that seems cool. And so I set out to do that. I did not make it. I got very close before Arcade Edition launched and added 4 more characters, and I was like, okay, fuck this.
Fuck this, yeah.
But I did get to C rank with like 20 characters. I was just full-on grinding Online Warrior, figuring out how fighting games worked at all with 0 outside resources or other people consulting me.
Yeah. I remember I did have a friend back in the time who was like super serious into fighting games, but I do not credit them much with my journey because he was an asshole, So it's like, because like he would, it's one thing to like, I don't know, be better at another person, but like he would just be better than me and not tell me what I was doing wrong. And I was like, well, this isn't very fun. I'm just losing.
Yeah.
But then it's like, it really was like that era of like Super 4 and Ultra 4 in which like a lot more tournaments started like streaming a lot more regularly, and like being able to watch tournament footage was helpful. But also just like the information just got better. But I remember like with 4, my project, I did actually have a project related to Ultra 4 in which I wanted to get to 3,000 ranking points with Jury, because I loved Jury. She just felt so fun to play in that version of the game. And I even started like an old Tumblr blog. You could probably still find it. I don't think it was purged or anything, but I would do a match, and if I won, like I would sit down with my recording software and go through the match basically frame for frame and just be like, okay, I fucked up here, or I did something cool here, right? And that process of, that's also really hard to like look inward and be like, no, I am messing up here. And I got like more invested like in like my equipment. For example, like I was a pad player for the longest time.
Sure.
And I played on one particular pad. Like I bought like this. It was like I still remember it so vividly. A Rock Candy, like ice blue Xbox 360 controller. That I just loved how it felt. I played on that pad so much the D-pad itself split in two at one point. From holding down back a lot because I had to learn to block.
Sure.
And I was like, okay, I need to take this more seriously. And I went to a thrift store in Japan to buy some arcade sticks. And because I was like, well, if I want to get better, I need to, like, I mean, nothing against pad players, but if you're also going to an arcade regularly to, like, train, it's like I needed that to be matched up. And bought my first, like, set of fight sticks.
Yeah, switching control schemes all the time is gonna trip you up for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think probably it was a pretty common, like, our exact versions of how this went obviously are unique to us, but the general story I think is pretty common because, you know, Street Fighter 4 was sort of a big revitalization of the genre. The genre wasn't dead, but it was definitely not on anyone's radar besides the ultra hardcore, and 4 brought it back, you know?
Yeah. Like, I think, like the only reason why you will, like, see Street Fighter on, like, ESPN is because, like, Street Fighter 4, like, it was just a huge surge of, like, interest from general audiences, but also, like, the hardcore players still, like, really enjoyed it. You know, it had a lot of, like, technical depth. Like, I could never do a one-frame link to save my life, but, like, the people who were really invested in fighting games could get so deep into it. And it also just, like, again, that tournament footage, like, I think Twitch became a lot more... I mean, Twitch had been around for a while, but, like, a lot more tournaments got into streaming their matches. And with, like, better production value. And Capcom themselves had, like, the Pro Tour. And just there are just so many great matches and moments from that era of Street Fighter that are captured really well. It's not just, you know... I mean, granted, we all love the grainy footage of Moment 37, but, like, I couldn't watch a whole tournament like that, you know? Like...
Yeah. Yeah, and I think a lot of things came together, right? It was like, this is a game that draws upon people's nostalgia because it's connecting a lot to Street Fighter 2, which a lot of people played. It was still a period where in Japan arcades were going very strong, and so it was good for that. And you also had, as you say, like, the streaming tech was getting there to the point where we weren't having to do, like, hand cam of screens. We were just capturing the game direct, which looks better and brings in more people. And also, you had Mad Cats at the height of their game being like, hey, here's a good arcade stick for $130.
Yeah. Like, multiple of their fight sticks were just, like, supremely high quality. Like, and you could see, like, the fact was, like, many pros were using them and sponsored by them, but, like, we're just using them, and you were like, oh, I could just go to the GameStop and get, like, that, like, white shelled Ultra Street, like, not Ultra Street Fighter 4, but that Street Fighter 4 stick, I imagine is still in the closets of many people.
I have the black one on a shelf up above me. That was the one, like, it's like, I am paying $130 for the same controller I am seeing pros use on stream. If I wanted, like, an entry version, which I was like, hey, listen, I think I'm doing this whole thing, I'm going to buy in. But if I wanted, like, the entry pretty good, but not that high level stick, that was $50. That's wild.
Yeah, like...
it got worse after that.
Yes. Are you talking about Street Fighter 5, or...
I'm talking about controller prices and availability, but also, yes, I'm talking about Street Fighter 5, a game that made me wonder if I liked Street Fighter at all.
God. I mean, it has been documented, I think, fairly well about, like, why 5 just didn't work, right? You know, it changed. It did, like, it had like an initial development cycle, and then all that work was scrapped, and then Capcom was not exactly like, they had proliferated the market, and think they were in a bit of a financial, like, they were having financial problems, and they're like, okay, we now need to rush development on a numbered Street Fighter.
Mm-hmm.
And
it's weird, these games where, like, we had every reason. Street Fighter 6 is good.
mm-hmm.
We had every reason to think it wouldn't be after 5, because their attempts to bring 5 back to life were so limp. And it's hard for me sometimes to wrap my mind around, and maybe I still can't, times when a game is so fundamentally busted you can't fix it, right? Like, I think of an example, and this is a different genre, but I think about developers from Bungie talking about building for Destiny,
Mm-hmm.
right? And they say, no, the core tools we use to build levels are so slow and are such a nightmare to use that it doesn't matter what we do. This game will always be, like, somewhat better at this stuff because building is so bad. And you have to imagine something like that is going on with Street Fighter V, because they put in a lot of time and a lot of effort on this game. And I think there are a lot of cool, like, character design ideas. I think actually 6 owes a lot more to 5 than people will give it credit for,
Mm-hmm.
because character move lists and stuff were really reimagined in 5 in ways that 6 carries forward.
Mm-hmm.
It all felt so fucking bad.
It just felt like, now, like, I still played Street Fighter V, and I still was having fun with it every now and again. Like,
Mm-hmm.
but, like, there was just something about, there's only, like, I could think of, like, countless moments from the 4 era of just incredible, like, tournament matches, right?
Mm-hmm.
And great grand finals and great moments and upsets. Whereas, like, in 5, I just wasn't, like, it just didn't hit in the same way. I could think of one grand final that I could think of that was, like, truly electrifying and, like, really incredible. Specifically, the one was the Capcom Pro Tour 2017 Grand Finals between Mena RD and Tokido.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's an incredible set, like, all around. I watched that live, and I was like, oh shit, this is, like, it was good, but it never, like, there was so much about 5 that just held its own self back in many ways. Like, the way it would layer on, like, new systems to try and add, like, a little bit more depth just, like, felt ultimately shallow to me.
I think my biggest problem is just, like, there are a bunch of little decisions, and some of them I can't put my finger on, right? It's like, I don't like how Street Fighter does combos as a franchise,
Mm-hmm.
but 5's was the worst incarnation of them. They just felt bad to do. But also there are a bunch of little moments where, like, one of my favorite examples is, so my main in Street Fighter 4 was Seth, right?
Mm-hmm.
And for 5, they bring Seth back and they redesign Seth, and they do some kind of troubling stuff with neurodivergence, I guess. I don't know how you would want to phrase it with a robot.
Mm-hmm.
But that's all whatever. The real, like, the issue that I want to point my finger at is they take this character and they say, okay, this character used to be a library of everyone's moves. And now their software has been damaged, and so now they can only use certain moves at a time. They steal them, like Kirby. Only what if every time Kirby used a move, he lost it and had to get it again? It's like, what?
Yeah.
Why would you do that?
Also, there is a reason why, like I briefly touched looking at, like, competitive, like, Melee or whatever. No one uses fucking Kirby because stealing a move based on the matchup at best gives you a neutral matchup. Like, and it was like with Seth, it was like, oh, you just get the move and you get to use it once. Also, you lose it if you whiff it.
Uh-huh. Yeah. It's decisions that just don't, I feel like there wasn't a lot of common sense on that dev team.
Which, to be clear, they probably were crunched to death and worked really fucking hard on that thing. But, like,
And
yeah,
it was outsourced to hell and back, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I say there wasn't a lot of common sense to that dev team. I don't know what dev team I'm talking about. I don't know who worked on Seth. I will never know.
Yeah.
Is it the same people who gave Alex like an avatar that made it look like he was made out of Play-Doh French fries? Or is it the team that made Urian look really sick?
Urian looked so fucking cool in 5. Like my main in 5, believe it or not, was like Colleen. Like she was just
Sure.
like, she had like really interesting tools. She looked cool. She had like really fun stuff. It was kind of it's the unfortunate thing is like in the final season of Street Fighter 5, they brought back like Akira from fucking rival schools, and anyone who knows me knows I have rival schools brainworms just constantly. And I was like, I wasn't even like, oh, that's cool. She's in a game that I don't like to play. Also the art style, there was none, or there was, it just looked like,
There were like 20.
yeah, it looked bad.
Yeah. Yeah. Except for sometimes it looked really good. It did occasionally look really good. It was just a game of vast inconsistencies and really bad netcode.
Oh,
and
yeah.
so heading into Street Fighter 6, we had every reason to be worried. And we started seeing stuff and we're like, it seems like this might be good, but we were worried.
I was worried when they announced that first teaser and was like, it's Ryu and Luke, and nobody really liked Luke from 5, but like things have changed. Like when footage started getting out there, that was like I was just, you, me, and everyone else in the FGC was basically burned by Street Fighter 5. Like, I still had some fun with it. I did play in locals at Street Fighter 5, but at a certain point it just wasn't fun, and especially when the pandemic happened, like it still continues. The netcode being so bad was like, oh, I have no motivation to play this online, and it's not that fun to begin with, and it's kind of fun at locals, but not enough for me to invest actual time into. Street Fighter 6 gets announced, and I'm just worried. And I'm like, did they really take in the lessons from the just critical drumming they got from Street Fighter 5?
And the thing is, partially. And I think it's better that the answer is partially, right? Because I think if you were to listen to the critics, you would have made Street Fighter 4 too. You would have said, we have to not touch any of the ideas we had with 5, they're radioactive. And that's not what they did.
They took like the good and interesting ideas that 5 had and expanded on it in like much more interesting ways. And also, during the beta phase, like the big worry, of course, was like, again, dog shit netcode, right? That first beta comes out and it's like, oh no, it's good. Oh, it's better than good. It's really fucking good.
It's pretty good netcode, yeah. Had some, we'll say, since then, had some issues, mostly with the cross-platform stuff. They have said themselves their cross-platform netcode is not behaving as planned, and they're working on it.
Because crossplay is really hard.
Yeah. And same console, same platform, no problem. And even then, cross-platform, sometimes it's just fine. But,
Yeah. But like I remember like when the first beta happened, and it was mostly I didn't get into any of the betas, but I did watch footage, and there was one or two. It was more the open betas that I participated in. But I remember when that first beta dropped, and you had Sonic Fox saying, oh yeah, I was playing games with Kazunoko from the middle of the US to Japan, and it was like practically flawless. It was like, oh no. Oh, is it going to be good?
And even then, is the game going to be good? Because here's the thing. Much love and respect to Sonic Fox. I don't trust Sonic Fox's taste in games. I don't trust the Mortal Kombat queer's taste in games. But yeah, then the open beta hit and we got hands-on, and it was like, this feels great. I think There's a sort of a Street Fighter 4-ish refocus on like target combos, an essential part, as opposed to emphasizing so hard some of the really demanding timings that like Links can have in Street Fighter.
Mm-hmm.
Still here, but they're de-emphasized. A much more dynamic set of resources.
Oh yeah.
Some really cool new character designs, some really cool reinvention of existing characters, and just a great experience, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, like, God, could you imagine if this game was bad?
Yes.
Yes,
Yes,
we
I
all
super
did.
can.
We all kind of did. But if that happened, it was like, oh man, Street Fighter is so fucking over. But now, no, we're so fucking back.
So back.
And also like with some of the woes of like netcode, I think a lot of like currently it is having occasional issues, but I think it might just be one of those things where Capcom was not necessarily expecting the response that this game has garnered.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, there are just too many people playing this video game, because it's like hitting in the same way that Street Fighter 4 hit in a lot of ways. Like,
Yeah, it's blowing up. Systems wise, I think like there is a so one of the things that Street Fighter V did a bunch of like character specific mechanics, right?
mm-hmm.
You had V trigger and V skill, which were like the basic. Usually, it varied a bit how it was used, but usually it was like one like character specific like utility move, and then often like a install of sorts, right?
Yeah, or well, almost all of them were,
or like one big move or something.
yeah. Like Cammy's, for example, was she would go into a install state, but as she used her specials, they became enhanced specials, and it drained the bar. Or Colleen was just like, oh, she would drop basically a bed of ice onto like the field, and that was her like V trigger. And what they've done here is by like one, I love the drive meter like as a concept, because it ties the drive meter has so many functions. It reminds me a little bit of like Exard's tension, which is like, oh yeah, no, this bar has 7 different features, and that's good to me, because it's like this one resource has a lot of dynamic purposes. And also like pretty simple to understand, I find. But I just love the decision that everybody starts with full drive meter at the beginning of each round. It is absolutely it's that thing from like Alpha 3 that I loved, which was like, yeah, start the game with full meter, fucking go.
Yeah, and it's not full super, right? Because one of the things drive can't do is supers, but it allows you to have some like versatility with the pacing and the game plan. It gives you options right from the start, and like controlling drive bar, at least in the current state of the game, is like a big part of the meta in a lot of matchups. There are some matchups where it matters less. I will say, as a Marissa player, there's some matchups where I don't care if I'm burned out. You can't stop me. But like starting you out with full means like the responsibility is on you to spend it wisely, but you can't say you were handed a bad hand.
Yeah. But also, like, with it being separate from, like, the super meter, which the super meter has very few. Like, it just can do either a level 1, level 2, or level 3. And then there's also, like, level 3 can become a critical art, which I'd never loved that in 5 they called supers critical arts, but here it actually makes a little bit more sense, because you only have access to critical art when you are at 20%, or is it 20 or 15 actually?
I think it's 20.
Yeah.
It's critical health.
Yeah, you are at critical health. And it was like, oh, okay. This makes a lot more sense, and it is really cool that all the level 3s, the cinematic level 3s, which are all like are just like really cool flexes for the animation team to do, have like a have a critical art version that is like slightly different in some way. That just really adds to the impact of the game.
As much as I like critical arts, one of my favorite things I think is the level 2s, actually, because I think with the level 2s, they did a really smart thing because they saw over the course of Street Fighter V, they had the V trigger, which again, very often like an install or something. And you could see when they didn't have a fucking idea, right? They're like, and this character's V trigger is they punch once and it does a lot of damage. And you're like, okay, this character should not have a V trigger, basically is what you're saying. And so now those installs, those style of installs are on level 2 supers for characters that have them. Marissa's level 2 super is an anti-air punch. She does not have an install. However, Guile's is his like solid puncher V trigger.
Yeah.
He just gets it.
Or for my main Jury in the game, her level 2 is Feng Shui engine, like activates, which is like something they kind of took away from it, like really de-emphasized in 5, but like in 4, like that was probably her best ultra that I just never could get a handle on, by it being because it was like I had so practiced her ultra 2 and it was like just so much more comfortable with the big burst damage. But here, by layering it as a level 2 super, it's like, oh, I now have like the ability to choose the Feng Shui engine when I want to. And that makes it like a much more dynamic tool. And it operates in a lot of the same ways. But like you're right, like the folding in of you can build up the 3 bar and then you can decide to like, oh, I'm going to do a level 2 and then a level 1 or 2 level 1s or something like that, right?
Because before 5, there are like, you can count on one hand the number of installs in the Street Fighter series. They're not a thing. And so, yeah, this way of carrying it forward, I think, was really smart. As far as uses for the drive bar, we have drive parry, which I think we all, like, I think we're far enough in the fighting game community, it's not a hot take to just be like, yeah, parry systems are usually a good idea.
Yeah. Although they kind of, like, drive parry is interesting because, like, you can parry an attack, and then you can also perfect parry. But I appreciate that, like, on some level, like, perfect parry adds so much, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, damage reduction to it, that it feels like it is a cool thing, and you know that there's going to be a moment in a tournament in which someone's perfect parry turns the entire tide of the game around, right? But it's also not, like, you don't feel like you're missing out on something if you aren't necessarily the best at perfect parrying.
Right, because the normal parry is still like a core utility for some characters in certain matchups, you know? If you are a character without a projectile against a character with a projectile, you're going to use drive parry. You don't need perfect parries, they're nice, but you need drive parry in general to have a good space in that matchup. This does, however, cancel into one of the more, I think, needs some adjustment mechanics, which is the drive rush. So out of a drive parry, you can double tap forward to dash, and you'll do a quick dash forward that covers space quickly and gives you like several frames of advantage on any move. It'll make things combo that don't otherwise. It will make you plus on moves that are minus. It'll make you crazy plus on moves that are already plus. I think this mechanic is too strong.
It's also like a little too, I don't know. I remember I saw a tweet a couple days ago that was like, "Oh yes, the drive rush adds so much dynamicism to the fight. You can drive rush into a low kick or drive rush into a medium punch. What possibilities exists here?" Like there is something to be said though of like doing a drive rush and then canceling with like a crouch or something to maybe force a whiff. But, like, that's, like, a very specific sort of...
And it's pretty rare that would be useful just because Drive Rush is so advantageous that you'd almost never need that, right? It's like, you don't need to bait something, you're already plus.
Right. Granted, you could still be, like, attacked out of it, but sure. It's like
True.
it is one of those things where its main application is combo extension. Like what like the meta currently is knowing when to like expend almost all of your drive meter in a single combo, because what you can do during it, and I'm still quite figuring out how to do it. It's kind of it's akin to an FADC in Ultra
Mm-hmm.
4, where you during your combo, during like the recovery frames of like particular moves, you can like hit the drive parry button and double tap forward and keep it going, um, which has been used to like again, there's a lot of like pro footage out there of just tacking on tons of damage off of a single interaction. Um, like heavy scaling is applied, but yeah.
I also think it looks kind of bad sometimes. Like a lot of the combos I'm getting hit with by people who are good with using the drive rush, right? It's like they are doing like tipper fierce kick into donkey kick as Ryu, and like there's a solid second and a half between those hits, but because they drive rush, just there's so much hit stun that it's going to go through, and it just looks weird and feels bad.
And also, it's mostly like used in the context of like loops, like where you will like be hit by 2 or 3 moves and then drive rush like cancel is done, and then it's the same loop again, loop again, like do it one more time, loop into ender, which is like, granted that is like easier to learn at a certain point, but it does lack a little bit, like to me it lacks a little bit of visual flash, because there is something really cool to I think like Guilty Gear Strive does this particularly well, where it's like, oh, just like all the, you know, different moves being used in conjunction with each other to make the extension that you just need to get that extra, you know, 4% of damage to like finish a round in. Like that's kind of like the unique tension and interesting aspect of combos in a fighting game at a high level, is like wondering if the opponent, if like the guy has like the like execution and the mental fortitude to pull off like this super optimal route, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think I am torn on this one because I hear what you're saying, and I think in a lot of cases I agree, but one of the very influential like fighting game pro scenes for me was the Marvel vs. Capcom 3 pro scene. And like the swaggiest combo of all time is Marlon Pie doing Doom's Jump M like 7 times in a row with no other move in between, and you're like, oh my god.
Granted, he was also like, Marlon Pie would like move Doctor Doom around the screen and hit you with like the Jump M, which is
He would use the combo to demonstrate every edge of the hitbox of that move. Yeah.
yeah. And I like that a lot too. Like Marvel's a game that we've played together, but I also just love watching Marvel 3 as a game, because it's like, oh, I can never be at this level, but it's really cool to see people who are.
For sure. It's a sick game. I think the smartest use of the drive bar is the overdrive, right? Is EX moves don't cost your super bar and replenish very quickly just by playing the game.
Yeah, that has been like their willingness to break away from like Street Fighter tradition for that is actually it's commendable, because like
Absolutely.
ever since Third Strike, which is arguably probably one of the most influential Street Fighters like design wise, like has been,
it's hard to choose because they're all so influential, but yeah.
But like in like since Third Strike, like the idea is that you expend a little bit of your super so that you can get an enhanced like EX version of like a move. And then that led to 4, where it's like you had 4 segments of the super bar that could allow you to do 4 EX moves, but building meter in that game took a long time. But like here, it's like, oh yeah, you have 6 pips of the drive gauge that you can turn into 6 EX moves. or overdrive moves, but like their EXs, you flash yellow.
Their EXs.
Yeah.
Listen, we're gonna call it an alpha counter. Fuck you. Like, I don't care about your brand.
It's always an alpha counter in my heart. You can do an alpha counter in this game. It's great.
Yeah.
It looks sick.
Yeah.
It just feels good to do as well. There's something to the kinetics of that. But anyway, by having this bar that fills up relatively quickly, and also is taken away when you're in burnout, like really makes it like it just feels fun to mess with.
Yeah. And I mean, I think like they also are able, because it is such an available resource, they're able to use it in character design in ways that I think are really smart. Like my main Marissa is a like Italian lady obsessed with Roman gladiators and sort of that old style of martial arts, right?
Mm-hmm.
And as part of that, a core element of her weakness is that she has an Achilles heel. She is very weak to lows. A lot of her moves have armor, except for to lows. But she has one move that has full body armor, and it's my EX like parry counter state.
How many times have you fucking hit me with that move?
I don't know. A lot, because I have consistent access to these EX moves. I'm able to make that part of my neutral, and it is still a gamble. It is still be spending resources for this, but it is not a resource. It is not like trying to do a counter super, which you're basically always a moron for doing unless you have the ultimate god read on your opponent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's just like it makes it's just a cool system. It's hard like to put into words, but like I am a big fan of like, not just because like I started with Alpha 3, but like this idea of having this constantly replenishing like resource means that games just have this like really fun tempo to it. Like you always feel like, all right, you always feel like you can go on the offensive in this game, like because you have this resource, and it's a very immediately satisfying and immediately visceral like part of the gameplay that you can incorporate very quickly. And I think that's like one of the bigger successes of overdrive moves as a mechanic.
Mm-hmm. I feel like another one, though, that people are a little more divided on is the drive impact.
Drive impact is interesting.
It's kind of like a focus attack that you can't charge. It's just like, it always does a level 2 focus, right?
Yeah. Is it reactable? We'll find out.
I asked God and he wasn't sure either.
Yeah, it is. It's definitely one of those things where I noticed, like, I've been, like, trying to climb the ranked ladder, and, like, it is a very immediately satisfying move. Like, hitting your opponent with it is a big dumb swing that you get to just make. And I will applaud the art direction and, like, whoever made the decision that whenever you would counter a drive impact with your own drive impact would cause the massive slowdown in, like, the, like, slowing
like
of
Doppler effect base.
Yeah, like, give that person a raise, because holy shit, it is cool every single time. Because, like, it gives you just enough time. It's kind of like, you know, a little bit like the Tekken 7 slowdown thing, where it, like, gives you just enough time to be like, either A, be like, oh shit, who has it, right? If it's, like, super close, or it's like, you know, someone like drive impacts at just the last moment, and it's like, it's super hype. Every single time it gets me.
It gives me just enough time that anyone playing against me will get to hear a lot of, yep, as I get destroyed.
Or just like the silent mutter of me just going, oh fuck. No. Being like, oh, I got red. Or doing the reading yourself. Like, that just feels really good. Like, when you know the drive impact is coming and then you just launch it yourself. And it's just like, you know, the cut in with the camera to change the angle of like the perspective and the massive splash of paint and ink that happens. It is all just visually really cool and really well represents like how powerful of a hit it is.
I think if I have a problem with it, it's not the reactable thing, honestly, because I think that part is actually okay, right? Because I think if you are looking for it, even these old hands can react in time, right?
Right.
The question is it reactable when you don't expect it? And like, well, maybe it shouldn't be, right? The problem is, I think there are a lot of times where moves, like, you will throw out a move, sometimes you'll throw it out meaty, and they're able to punish with drive impact because I don't know if it's like your character does the full, like, basically the acts as though the move hit as opposed to being blocked, right? But there are moves that feel like they should recover in time that absolutely do not.
Right. There are a couple of times in which I've been playing a match and the drive impact will come out, and I felt like even when I have the read, right, when I intentionally go for a multi-hitting move or a slow enough move, it just feels like, oh wait, no, they hit one button and they won the interaction. Like I get that, like, it is like it's slightly that kind of like implies that it's not as like deep particularly. I still think it is fairly well considered, but it might need some tweaking, but I don't know what tweaking it needs.
I think it's one of those things, I feel like we're both in a place where we both would like some changes, but if changes never happened, we wouldn't be too grumpy about that.
No. I mean,
usually when you get hit, it's your fault.
I have found some success of like, I use a 8 buttons on the, like an 8 button, like traditional fight stick. I have found that by practicing drive impact by using the 7th button on the stick, like the upper right button, I have gotten a lot more consistent with like drive impact punishes or launching it myself and surprising the opponent with it. Like just having quick access to it rather than the awkward, like, I don't think it's that awkward of a hand motion because like I did focus attacks all the time in Street Fighter 4, but like having just a slightly less amount of time to hitting that button, I find is it's been helpful.
So here's a question.
Sure.
How do you feel about drive impacts during burnout? Burnout is when you are out of drive bar, you enter a state where, one, you can't do any X moves, any drive rushes, any drive parries, any drive impacts yourself. This also means if you get hit by there's the drive impact in the corner. If you block it at any time, you bounce into the wall and they can combo you. If it's while you're burnt out, that you get stunned and they get literally any combo they want. And also, with most characters, if someone drive impacts you and you're burnt out, you have no answer. Now, I have to ask you how this feels, because as a Marissa, I hit medium punch, 236, medium punch, and then they take about 20% for trying to drive impact me, even though I'm the one who hit the wrong button.
I have, like, for me, I have, like, I'm not gonna be as glib as to say of like, oh yeah, don't get hit. I do find myself though, if I am in burnout, I feel like, especially as a jury player, it's like, oh, I have messed up somewhere because she has so many different ways to mitigate drive like bar loss through way of like the feng shui tokens, right? And it's like I feel like, okay, yeah, this is kind of like, if I'm in the corner in burnout and they have meter, it's like, okay, this is kind of my fault. But also, I had the good old, like, you could throw people out of drive impact. If you could read the drive impact, like, you could just throw them out. Granted, it's not as big of a reward for it, but, like, I'm also in an intentionally like, I have ended up in a disadvantageous situation that I have limited answers to, but there are some answers.
And you're not in that situation because you made every right decision and it just went bad. You're there because you fucked up.
Right. And, you know,
Yeah, that makes sense.
as a balance thing, like, it should be harder to get out of a bad, you know, situation that it is, you know, it seems obvious to say, but then there's, you know, Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3 X Factor, you know?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
In
Where
some
it's like if
yeah.
if someone takes out two of your characters in Marvel vs. Capcom 3, like perfect, you don't touch them, but they leave your third character alone for a second, it is better than you having your full team.
Especially if you're playing like Virgil or Dark Phoenix. It's like, oh yeah, no, you made every wrong decision to this point, but you make 3 correct ones.
Here's your reward.
Yeah, you make 3 correct ones and you win. It's not as severe. I think, and also there's some other aspects to, like when you get into that stun state, when you're in burnout and you get launched into a wall, you get stunned. If the opponent doesn't kill you, you get all of your like drive, like bait, like your drive bar back automatically.
Right, it instantly ends burnout.
Mm-hmm. And to that end, I feel like that's an okay compromise because it's like, sure, your opponent is getting a free combo on you, and that sucks, and you shouldn't be there. But if they mess it up somehow, because it comes back after 1 hit, right? So there is still like, it's still relying a little bit on the opponent messing up or not having enough knowledge. But it could also just be you played defensively long enough to just have enough life left to get you back into, you know, a state in which you have a full drive meter. Like, okay, there may be a chance for you to turn the tables.
The other thing that I think is interesting, and I personally really like, over the last, I don't know, like decade, I feel like there has been a renaissance in how we handle chip, right? Because we've had like, okay, we have some fighting games where it's like, oh, certain characters have special, like Hyde in Under Night has like, oh, his sword normals cause chip, right? Whereas, you know, classically it's only specials and supers. And then sometimes you have games where, oh, like only supers can chip, or oh, chip can't kill, but it can do temporary damage, or only supers can chip kill, or whatever. And Street Fighter 6's approach is specials and supers chip you a lot when you're burnt out, and otherwise they don't do anything.
Yeah.
And I really like that.
I like that change a lot too. Like, I feel like I'm mixed on whether or not like you should be able to chip someone out for a victory. But here, like in Street Fighter 6, what they've done is the only reason you get a chip out victory is because you're burnt out, and remember, being in burnout is entirely within your own, like almost entirely within your own control. Like
it is possible to get there by being comboed, right? To like just have a series of interactions where you just got hit so much you lost all your bar. At that point, you were about to get perfected anyway. At
a certain point. Although there are some level 3s, if done at particular times, will in fact like completely drain your like bar. Like I believe, like I've seen some matches in which, like for example, JP's level 3 like causes burnout immediately, but it's also balanced by the fact that he has to spend a level 3 to get you to that state, right?
Sure, right.
Which by having the super meter be this separate resource that, again, can only be burnt out by way of level 1, 2, and 3s, like, that becomes, like, part of the balance there, because it's like, oh, I know that they don't have access to some of their best moves at this point.
I do feel like they should give you... I think you should be able to drive parry while burnt out. I think basically you should have to do a perfect parry, and it will give you the benefits of a non-perfect parry. But I think you should have some option to mitigate the chip. And then also, I have seen players, and you can say like this is their fault, because it is, right? But I have seen players who are like, you know, like pro players playing a match, and like, you know, of course they're streaming, so they're talking as they go, and they try and parry something and forget that they're burnt out and it kills them.
Right.
And it's like, I do feel like, if they fuck up the timing or something, but that does feel like a pretty harsh penalty for forgetting that.
I don't know how harsh of a penalty it could be, but maybe you get like one drive impact in burnout, right? Otherwise, you end up in stun if you like mistime it. Like, really emphasize that you are in a very dangerous like state, but giving you one time that if like, I don't know, you could gamble it all, right? Where if you like counter the drive impact, right, you get like your meter back, or if you lose, you're in stun, But that might be a little too powerful in some ways, because that could feel like almost like a rage art in like Tekken 7, where it's like, well, I'm going to lose anyway, might as well gamble it all, and if I win, I get access to like a really strong combo. Or
yeah, I think to me it feels like I would like one extra defensive measure of some sort during burnout, but I'm by no means a game designer, and maybe the ideas we have definitely might not work. Maybe no idea is good enough, and you just need to hold the L.
Hold the L and don't get burned out.
Yeah.
But no, like systems wise, I think like Street Fighter 6 is already in this like really interesting place to be, because it just feels so like, it feels like everyone has like, even some of the lower tier characters, like I feel like even them, like they have the ability to get some work done because of like how free flowing the system is and how generous it can be.
I do like, so we've had plenty of games, especially recently, be like, like, what is the solution here? How do we help people get into the game? Do we do auto combos? Do we do stylish controls? What do we do here? And Street Fighter's approach here has been the modern controls, which have some auto combo functions, right? They also have a lot of like one button access to specials and stuff. And I think we'll see how it shakes out. There's like a damage nerf on using modern controls. And also you have fewer options. So I think there are characters where like, I don't have a problem with anyone using modern controls. I think there are characters where I would say you really need to learn not to, right? Like I've fought Jamies that use modern controls, and I'm like, your character has so many moves. What the effect of this is, a deeply unpredictable character becomes really predictable, and I just kick the shit out of you.
But at the same time, I find that like I think modern controls are a really interesting answer to the problem. And honestly, I think about like back in the days of Street Fighter 4, I would have these matches in which I would invite people over to my dorm, or I would take the game to a friend's house. And because of the 6-button layout, and because of like how deeply complicated Street Fighter can be from an input point of view, it just like people who had only a little bit of an interest in fighting games wouldn't have a lot of fun at the beginning because they couldn't do a fucking move, right? Or, and so like I have no necessarily any problem with like, okay, you press forward and special and you get a Hadoken, right? I think that's great for introducing people to the game, and I still think it has its applications. Like there are some pros who are saying that like, oh yeah, I'm going to play like modern Luke, and that will be how I approach certain matchups, or something, right? Like I think it is a interesting problem to solve, and I think it still needs a little bit of tweaking, but that's not a bad place to be. Like I don't think like some people think of modern controls as like sort of like, oh, you just give different characters win buttons. It's like not really. I mean, although modern Zangief is a bit of a terror. That is
that's true.
Yeah, instant SPDs is kind of nutso. But also I've been able to beat like a fair share of modern Geefs by like trying to learn the game. And it's like, okay, they are limited in their tool set. I know they don't have this particular tool at their disposal, or they do not, cannot consistently, they can only do certain versions of certain moves. I can work around this.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I definitely agree with that. With Geef particularly, though, I think there's an interesting problem, maybe, I don't know. Looking at tier lists, there's not a lot of there's a fair bit of disagreement, which is healthy early on, right? That people can't quite agree. But I think you have seen a lot of people saying that Manon is probably top tier, and that Geef is better than whether people put him top tier or A or B, he's better than he's been in a long time in these games. And I think this is, in large part, I think the modern controls makes a big difference. I also think if you look at the mechanics of drive impact, drive parry, and drive rush, none of them matter to a command grab character, to a grappler. Yeah, just the ability to bypass, a character who just ignores all of that, right? A lot of characters' offense, it's okay, you can parry it, you can drive impact it, and those just don't work against a grappler.
I think it's an interesting design problem where grapplers in the early stages of certain games can be perceived as really, really strong because, one, they tend to have a very simple game plan. Get close, do my throw, right? That's a pretty simple to understand game plan that most people can grok, because it's oh, I'm the big bodied person who can slam people into the ground. Okay, I know what I need to do. And also just their damage output, and like you said, the way they can mitigate some of the tools that the characters have by way of their design, that can be frustrating. But also over time, grapplers don't quite get necessarily the same results as the game goes on, with there are exceptions, right? But I think they both benefit and suffer from a really laser focused game design plan. And so I feel I don't know. I see a big, when fighting a grappler, I just think, okay, I need to just get better. Right?
Sure. Yeah, no, that's fair. I definitely think there are times when stuff happens against a grappler where I feel like that should have been, that strong. But that is definitely the exception rather than the rule. Usually it's why did I think that would work, right? It is just punishing you it's oh, you fought a Luke and you did something stupid and he did 15%. You fought a Geef and did something stupid and he did 30. Get better. Still be stupid.
Yeah. That's, at a certain point, you just gotta hold that L and just be okay, get into the lab and just figure out the answer, or go online and see what people's answers are to the problem.
Yeah.
Speaking of characters,
yeah,
do we want to kind of just go through some of the standout characters?
Sure. I think there are some of the new designs I think are interesting to talk about, and also some of the things they've done with old designs. I think we've mostly said what I want to say about Zangief, right? Where I think the modern controls do interesting things for him. And I think, okay, one thing that I do want to note is the hitboxes for grabs and throws in this game are funny in one very particular way. I think Geef still has a bit of a vacuum on that light SPD, right? But the real funny thing is the vertical element. Any air throw, grab, or command, horizontal, the hitbox varies and is usually okay. Vertical, it's unbelievable. If you do a Borscht Dynamite at the top of the screen and an opponent is in their first 3 jump frames, you get them.
Oh yeah,
it's just wild.
I have been held into the loving embrace of Zangief as I get slammed into the ground because I had the audacity to buffer a jump
to punish this whiff throw. Right? Nope. turns out it wasn't whiffed. You fucked up.
Yep.
And this is like normal throws too. I was playing some Cammy, and I was just like, okay, I just jump and hit throw, and if they jump at all, they're fucked.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like, it's kind of wild. I don't know if it's like a problem. It is weird though.
It is pretty funny when it happens, though. Like,
Yeah.
Couple others. I wanted to bring up Menon, who's like, I find Menon so interesting as like, one, her character design is one of like, she reminds me of Street Fighter EX of all things. Like this absolutely feels like she is a character from one of those games. For those who don't know, Street Fighter EX is a spin-off series that was developed by Eureka. That is where Skullomania was made, and that's why they like, that's why like Fighting Layer uses Skullomania, even though like he first appeared in a Capcom game. Like I think they have the rights to their original characters. That's not the point. The point is Menon is this like incredibly tall like ballet judoka who is also a fashion model, who like her game plan, and this is the game plan of like many characters, is like building up a resource. It's like, no, she like hits you with a particular command throw, and her command throws just keep getting stronger. Like I keep like and because of like she's a ballet like character, her legs are like incredibly long, and so I get hit in neutral way more often than I think I should. It's like, oh yeah, no, she just has like this sweeping like arcing kick that takes up a third of the screen. She's cool.
Yeah. I think I like her design a lot. I am a little torn on how she's. I think she's too strong right now,
Yeah.
and I'm a scrub, right? I'm willing to accept that maybe, you know, that I could be wrong about this, and maybe there are easy solutions. But having a character, almost everyone in this game has the same health, right? Marissa has a tiny bit more. Zangief has a little more than that, but everyone else has 10,000 health. So she isn't squishy. And she has incredible anti-airs, incredible pokes, incredible combos, incredible confirms, and a really good command throw. And that's just a lot of pros to give one character.
Yeah, and also there is the fact that like, so many characters in this game have a resource that they can build. It's only like Menon is the only one that her resource does not deplete between rounds. Like even like, I'm not saying it should be as extreme as like Jamie's case in which he sobers up between rounds. But like, I don't know, maybe take away like 1 or 2 Judica medals between rounds, right? Because it is a little crazy how the moment she's in 5, like she's taking like 30% or 40% off of a single throw.
Yeah, 37%.
37
for most characters.
Yeah.
Which is
that's a lot. Yeah.
It's a lot. I honestly, I think you should keep it, right? I think you should keep the medals fully stocked between rounds. I just think you need to give her some more trade-offs to make that fair. I like the idea though that like it keeps building, and like you start off the next round, and because of how the last round went, it's like, no, yes, be terrified of that command grab. It is the scariest it's ever been. I like that feeling. I just think, yeah, you can't have a character. The whole thing about command grab characters generally is that they have those command grabs and they're very powerful, but they're not great at the neutral game otherwise. And having a character that dominates neutral but also has maybe the game's best command grab is a little much.
Maybe if there was a way to like, if the opponent could somehow take away medals, right? Like what if you land a normal throw against her, like in a counter state, and like, you know, only the punish counter does this, but like a punish counter throw takes away 1 medal because she's
I kind of like that idea.
Yeah, because she's a Judica, she shouldn't be thrown. You know, maybe like that feels like, at that point, you're still taking a big risk because command grab characters are way dangerous at that range. but it feels like to me you could have this interesting push and pull of like, okay, now I really need to go for this throw or find like gaps in her game plan in order to take away this sort of resource, you know?
But then you have to give her a special, like a command tech. If she does like 2-1-4 and then grab, it doesn't grab you. But if you grab her, she punishes you hard for trying to grab her. Because that's judo right there.
That would be actually kind of cool at that point.
That'd be sick.
That would be kind of sick where she like, you know, the animation could be like she just like pops the hands away and then just body slams you into the fucking ground or something.
Mm-hmm.
Other than that, like I think she's cool. I think it's very funny how she just vogues for the camera when she wins. It's a good as hell design.
Talking of a classic character, I have, since 4, I have found Guile, like, perversely appealing, right? There is something very satisfying about just the way his moves feel. And it turns out, the little icing on the cake you needed to push me over, the little, you know,
little nudge,
olive oil drizzle or whatever, is him shouting perfect when your timing is spot on. And making me feel really good about myself.
Yeah. I think it is pretty cool that, like, if you release the Sonic Boom at just the right, like, timing window, you get an enhanced Sonic Boom. Like, that's cool.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because, like, the big problem for charge characters for me has always been, like, I do the classic problem where if you see me, like, do a jumping punch as Guile, you know I fucked up, like, or a jumping kick as Guile, you know I fucked up my flash kick. And I really like the design idea of, like, maybe making the windows for your charge moves to be a little wider, but add in an extra, like, specific window for the people who are really good at it. Like, that feels right because it's, like, it's way easier to get a charge move to happen in this game, I felt. But, like, by making, you know, Guile shout perfect and confirm, no, you did this right, like, that's good feeling too.
He does it with a flash kick too. It's somersault and then flash kick for a perfect.
Right. Which is the better name.
Yeah. Though I still have affection because of CVS2 and the Japanese voice. Somersault!
CVS2 is just like, man, Capcom, if you really want to, like, get people going again, fucking re-release that with modern netcode.
And maybe a bit of a balance.
Maybe just a little one, just a touch, just a scotch.
DJ has seemed really strong. I mean, first of all, they took DJ, a character who has always been a not very fun, uncomfortable black stereotype, and made him both fun as hell and sick as hell.
Yeah, like, giving him a fake wind slasher that he can do on top of regular and, like, better versions of, like, the air slasher, like, is really interesting. It gives him a lot of dynamicism. Like, do you know what the most notable thing of, like, Ultra 4 fucking DJ was?
The Ultra 2, where he did the maracas.
I was thinking more along the lines of, like, oh yeah, if you built up all his meter, he could do a ton of chip damage. And, like, that became the strategy for DJ mains, was just, like, build up, like, super and ultra and just expend it all for, like, one chip damage combo. And it's like, that's not a great place for the character to be.
No.
But now he's back, and he's, like, wild and funny and signs the camera when he wins. Like,
yeah.
He is, like, this explosive ball of energy, and also just, like, it's cool. Fighting him can be, like, I find fighting him interesting because he's still a charge character in this instance, right?
Mostly, they have changed a few of his moves to quarter circles, but yeah, like, I mean, his projectile and stuff.
it's like, yeah, you still have like the classic like counter to a charge character is like somehow finding a way to break their charge. And um he's like, I don't know, he's like, it's fun. It's like it's a fun redesign for the character, not just aesthetically but also mechanically.
Yeah. Yeah, no, they've done a fantastic job. For a while I thought he was too strong. Um Air Slasher is not as safe as you think.
Yeah. I
That's a punishable move.
I found my answer was like a lot of like if I space my jumping heavy kick well enough, like I can punish a lot of like air slashers.
Absolutely, yeah. Uh, Ryu is an interesting state in this game, isn't he?
Yeah, yeah, he is. They gave
By
they gave him a new move,
yeah, yeah.
which is substantial.
Well, they kind of gave him two.
Yeah,
but, because Denjin charge as well.
yeah. But the move I'm talking about is like he now has this move where it's like he is channeling a Hadoken but releasing it like very close range. And it's like one, I think like that's just like cool because like the idea now is like now that we're finally past Third Strike chronologically, it's like no, he has, mastered some aspect of the Hado that allows him to do this sort of thing. And also having access to Denjin, which was meant to be like the pinnacle of the technique, is like, oh, he can just do it now. And I think that's like narratively cool, which is a thing that sometimes fighting games like Street Fighter has never been particularly great at this, but I think it is cool that like they are representing Ryu's growth as like the strongest man in the world or whatever with this like slight like design change.
And it's also kind of interesting because it is a fancier, like more proper version, right? But if you look at how the move is used and the animation, it is kind of some versions of Sakura fucking up a Hadoken. And so maybe he also took some inspiration from his student.
Yeah.
Like any good teacher should.
Yeah, it's like they like making that change, I think, like by him not necessarily being the protagonist character either. They can do some interesting things with him mechanically. Even though he's still a good old Ryu. Like I see like a modern Ryu online, and I would just be like, Ryu's like the easiest character to learn. Although Dragon Punches can be hard for some people, I admit.
Yeah, I mean, no hate. I think some of the best matches I've had online, like just the most like fun and like spirited, where I walked away being like, "You're all right, kid," have been against modern Lukes. Because we don't need to go too crazy deep on Luke here, but Luke was a despised character in 5 because they added him and he was just ridiculously overpowered, and he was here being this cocky asshole about like, basically kind of like move over old man, I'm the future kind of vibes. And here he's just like a lovable broy himbo.
He's such a fucking dweeb, and that's the secret sauce. Like, it's one thing to like. One, I think his English voice actor has done a lot to like endear people to the character by the way he's interacted with like the community, but also just by how Luke is in the game. He is like, he was a guy who was so bad at being a PMC, he got sent to Metro City to be a coach, and he just takes it in stride. Like, it's, he's just a big dweeb, and that makes him instantly more appealing. And he's kind of fun to play, too, because they didn't make him as ridiculously strong as he was in 5. Also, he looked terrible in 5. His aesthetic was awful dog shit. Like,
I mean, he does still have watermelon smuggler arms. He's still gotten the RE5 Chris Redfield going on a bit.
A little, but not. The hair is much better.
The hair is much better. Another thing that I think is crucial, though, is I think Luke is a better Shoto than Ryu. And I don't mean in terms of strength. I mean, Shoto is a term that kind of has very quickly lost all meaning. the way I'm trying to use it here is as a character who is sort of like a bread and butter, straightforward character with tools for any situation, but not the best at any situation. And the thing is, like, I think Tatsumaki was always a move that was kind of confusing how you're supposed to use it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Ryu's Hadoken, was too good. And not as in it was overpowered, but it encouraged you to focus on being a zoner.
Right.
And Luke's Sandblast is like Kikoken. It can't go full screen.
Even its most powerful version can't go full screen, I believe. Like, I think he has to, like, you have to spend level 1 to have, like, a projectile that can hit full screen. Which, again, back to that, like, narrative thing, you have this idea of Luke still learning how to be a good fighter, and he has to channel all this power just to, like, be able to hit someone at full screen. That's interesting.
And so then you get the effect where he is a character who does what Shoto's like should kind of do. And you know, again, I'm not using this to dunk on Ryu. I love Ryu.
Mm-hmm.
I think, however, as far as like showing a new player how to play, the thing a Shoto can do is say, listen, you are pretty good at a lot of things. Find out what your opponent is good at and don't challenge them on that. And find out what they're bad at and challenge them there.
Mm-hmm. If
Luke is up against a zoner, he's not as good of a zoner and he needs to play rushdown. If he's up against a rushdown, he's a better zoner and he'll zone them.
Exactly. And
then also that level 1 super you mentioned is so fast and the damage is not crazy, but it teaches players to be like, listen, if you saw them hitting a button, you can hurt them. And it just teaches you to have that mindset, I think, in a way that's really effective because of how fast it is and the range.
Oh, yeah. And also, like, giving him a utility move, like the MMA run, like, is, like, he just kind of goes into a crouching run that has, like, 2 options. Like, that is shallow enough that I think most people can pick up on, like, oh, why is this move not doing anything? Oh, I need to hit a button to, like, make it do a secondary effect, like, to teach you that some moves are setups for other moves, but also it's, like, one's an overhead and one's a low. Or it could be just canceled and then you could do like a standing medium punch, right? Like that is a really effective way to teach like the idea that moves can branch from each other.
Yeah, I just think it's a really terrific design. He's the Ryu of this game, hilariously, and I think he's kind of the best Ryu of a game that's been introduced in a very long time, as far as the lessons he teaches you by playing.
Absolutely.
But speaking of the other Ryu of this game, oh no, not Ryu, we already did that one. I mean Ken, who is almost zero Ryu at this point.
Oh my god, Ken is just one. He is going to other countries to introduce crypto to destabilize them. Fuck is that about?
True.
Fuck is that about, bro? Like, I liked him better when we all thought he was just a forest. But yeah, he is just absolutely it's like they took that meme back in like 2009 of flowchart Kens and just like, no, what if we made him real though?
Well, it's like, and what if we made the flowchart kind of impossibly complicated, right? Like, you can still just be like Hadoken Shoryuken, right? Those are still there. But, like, he has 3 Hadokens, he has 3 Shoryukens plus running Shoryuken plus his EX Shoryuken, which is Shoryu Reppa. He has 3 kick specials. 236, 214, and 623 all are different kick specials. That's ridiculous.
Yeah. And then also he has like a kick special that leads into a target combo that's both a low to high to low. Like,
yeah, he has a kick Rekka now. Like, it's and also he has the run special with follow-ups. I already mentioned, Shoryuken, but you have, Tatsumaki and Dragon Lash. And I played Ryu, or excuse me, I'm sorry. I played Ken, and I was like, wait a minute. I'm playing Ken in a Street Fighter, and I have to look at a move list? What is happening?
What is fucking happening? Yeah, because it's like the Dragon Slash is like its quarter circle kick. He's never had a quarter circle kick. Or not quarter circle kick. Like Dragon Punch kick. Like, fuck.
Yeah. And on all, yeah, he's got the DP kick and the quarter circle kick, and he's got the follow-ups. And if you want the flames, you either got to do EX or you got to do the run Shoryu. It's like they have made him a really sophisticated rushdown character in a way that is so fascinating.
He is also very silly to play when, I mean, granted, it was just that one time we were too tired and was just like, fuck it, let's just play Ken Mirrors.
And it was interesting to see the meta develop as to like, okay, we both know we're going to walk towards each other at EX Shoryu. The question is like, at first we were like, oh, okay, whoever EX Shoryu's second loses, right? But then we're like, oh, wait, but if the timing is such and the spacing was such, actually the first one has better because of like the little like second step into, it's like, I don't know. It's, you can be smart about how stupid you are. And that's great. That's beautiful.
It's beautiful. Yeah. Yeah. Ken is in an interesting spot. What a wild character.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the last character to talk about before we talk about our mains more specifically is Jamie, another newcomer here.
Yeah. Yeah, Jamie is interesting. I played him for a little bit. His whole thing is that he feels like in some ways a template for like the other build-up mechanic characters in some ways, because like his whole thing is about like, okay, you want to use the ender that lets you take a drink, and when you have like 4 drinks in you, that gives you an install state. And I don't know, it's like he's a little fun. I had fun with him for a while. I just felt like for all of his tools, sometimes like it felt like each individual, like the tools together didn't necessarily coalesce into like a stronger character sometimes.
Yeah, I'm still figuring out, because I feel like early on I was like, okay, this character is really cool, and then after a bit it was like, I think this character is pretty underpowered, right? And now it's like this character might just be really matchup dependent, which is still kind of a form of underpowered, right? But like it's funny because I was looking into there was I love reading threads of people complaining about Marissa, right? And I read one of them, and everyone was just like, what do you just use? Like, oh, no character can beat Marissa. Just use Jamie. He bodies Marissa. I was like, really? Every time I fought a Jamie, it has been like no contest. Like, I don't even know if I need to look at the screen.
It doesn't help that like he's weird because like he gets these drinks in him and then he sobers up between rounds, and it feels sometimes a little hard to build that momentum because he has to build 4 stock in order to like get into his like, you know, his hair becomes all wild and free, right? Like, and that's like that is his best like state because he has all his moves, because he has moves locked behind however many drinks he has in him, and then it actually doesn't necessarily take away from his level 2, because if you're not in that 4th level state, you can do the level 2 to temporarily to get there. But if you're in level 4 and you do his like level 4 drink and you do his level 2, you rebuild your drive meter, which has some implications for like, I think there's this YouTuber that I follow named Desk, who he does a lot of like really flashy, impressive combos with characters whenever a new game comes out, and he got like an extremely long 69 hit combo or whatever based on like using Jamie, because like, oh yeah, the level 2 just gives me back all of my drive meter, and if I time this right, I can just extend and extend and extend.
Yeah, yeah, and I do think it would be a good idea to change it so that like maybe he goes down a level or two levels between fights as opposed to completely resetting between rounds.
Mm-hmm.
Because I do think starting that climb back over again is just a little rough.
It's just a little frustrating too, because like you
Mm-hmm.
have to work so hard to get to that level 4, and then it's like, oh, it's just completely gone. Like I would say like dropping 2 would be like probably the best, because then at that point, like, okay, I could stay a little loosey goosey, you know.
And also, this could be I mean, I'm sure to a certain degree this is a psychology thing, right? But a lot of Jamies have this mindset of like, okay, and once I get to 4, the match is in my favor, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I have very often found the match goes better for me once they're in 4. Not because the character is worse, but because they're like, okay, so far I've been playing conservatively to build up levels. Now I will go into the ground. Okay.
Mm-hmm. And then also like you feel that way because it's like, oh yeah, I'm going to lose it next round anyway, so I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
go all out. And like I feel like ideally like a Jamie like as designed should be like this kind of dancing in and out of like opponents' ranges and then just punishing them for overextending. And then just
Mm-hmm.
like I don't know. I think he needs some work to like, but I think he's in an okay space like now, but I think he definitely needs some work.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I agree with that. Do you want to talk mains for a
Yes.
minute here?
Yes. Um
Marissa was made for me. This is my hole.
I am so happy that you have found Marissa. Um, like Marissa is we've talked about her like on and off throughout this podcast, but like the way you have clicked with Marissa is like really something to see.
They don't make characters like this in 1v1 fighters. They just don't do it. These are tag characters. Characters that are built around the idea of like armoring through all your bullshit and like oh, nice, nice like ancient kung fu like kata. I'm just going to deck you. You get those in Dragon Ball, you get those in Marvel. You don't get those in Street Fighter. It's so good.
I have been punched in the face many a time by this character, and my response is like, well, I deserve this one, like because it's it is like really interesting to fight against too because of my main jury, because when I mentioned that we're like us being so fucking back, like that's how I am for jury, because they gave her back some of her tools from 4, because I fucking hated what they did to my girl in Street Fighter 5. Like
Yeah.
they made it in Street Fighter 5 where it's like, oh, okay, I build up a specific type of kick, but I can only build up these stocks, and then I do this thing, and I don't have a dive kick anymore, and I'm like, what are we doing? And now it's like, oh, her dive kick is back, and when you build up these stocks, you can use it for anything. And it's like, thank you. This is the freedom that I've wanted from this type of character. Um,
Mm-hmm.
it was like,
Yeah, because in 4 you did have the problem of like having to hold down the button for whatever you
mm,
charged, and like there are two problems with that. One, of course, it just gets uncomfortable with your
it
hands,
does.
but also you can't use that button, right? Like if you're holding down a medium kick projectile, you can't use medium kick.
Which her best moves were on kick, Like she
Yeah,
is a
yeah.
taekwondo fighter. Like her best moves are just like in that space. And as much as I learned to adapt and use like the charging of the fireballs, like it was just such a like it was so badly implemented in 5. But in 4, or not, yeah, but in 6, it's like, oh, I can build up 3 stocks and I can either use it for an overhead, or I can use it for a low projectile, or I can use it for this like forward advancing slashing kick that is like really helpful.
Hmm.
I kind of wish she had her anti-air fireball back, but that's like small potatoes. Like I'll live. Like I'll just, I have like the anti-air pinwheel kick, and that's a lot of fun.
And pretty good in this game.
Oh yeah, like pinwheel kick was always just like grounded in 4 and a little bit in 5 as well, but like, here was it could you anti-air with it in 5? I don't know, I didn't play her. Yeah.
Yeah.
It just like she just felt like bad to play in Street Fighter 5, but here it's like, oh no, she's like a lot of fun. She has like all the interesting utilities from 4 with some of the interesting ideas from 5. And it was like, I played as Jamie for a while, but then I was like, I was always going to go back to Jury, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like, the changes that they made, like, to bring her back to, like, how she was, made me so happy.
And, like, for me, like, I played some Jamie in the beta, but once the main game came out and I got my hands on Marissa, I really haven't looked back, you know? I think her kit is just really, like, there are parts of her kit I still, you know, I am still growing and learning as a Marissa player. There's still parts of her kit that I need to make better use of. But, like, her charge punch as, like, both a combo tool and, like, neutral and, like, punishing people for getting restless is really fun. I love her parry with her counter with the follow-ups, you know, the low, the high, and then the grab. The grab is great. Undersung hero, I love her step kick. It's so good. Some matchups, like, especially I feel like a Jamie one, if you burn out a Jamie and then you just step kick until they die because they just can't do anything, very funny. Just a big fun friend. I don't know. I really like how they have taken this style of character, this sort of like bully character, right? As it can very often be, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like Broly in Dragon Ball is a bully. And they have built this character in a way that works in Street Fighter, and people get mad at the damage you do, but no one ever complains about the hit having landed. Unlike other bully characters, it's like, no, you always know why you got hit.
Mm. Yeah, and in our matches, I, like, it's been one of those things where, like, I, as the Jury player, I'm like, oh, I know where I fucked up here. Like, but what that has done, like, because of, like, my experience with Jury has been, like, being able to, like, because I think there are just some matchups that are just, like, bad for her. But, like, she has just enough, like, sneaky tools that I'm like, okay, I'm back in this mindset of, like, no, where can I, like, you know, get these little advantages? And she has, like, a lot of, like, little advantages I think are, like, unsung in some ways. Like, her crouching medium punch is so fucking good. Like, it's plus, and it's this backwards, like, claw thing, so it looks cool, but it's like, oh no, this is just, like, a really useful move. And it's like, it's helped me, like, find edges and, like, you know, find the gaps in people's game plans. And it's, like, been really fun to just get in there and be like, okay, I'm going to test, like, what game plan you have constructed here and try and break it down. And when I break it down, it's like, I've had some matches, like, I've been on that ranked grind where it's like, oh, I know exactly what you're all about, and just how she can dismantle a game plan is so fun.
I'm actually going to call an audible here.
What's up?
Folks, we're going to stop here, make this a 2-part episode. You could probably hear by now, so I don't need to, like, you know, peek behind the curtain. I can be honest about this. I'm still sick. My throat is messed up, and I am losing my voice. So we're gonna stop here. We will do a second part because there's too much more I want to talk about.
There's so much to this game, and, like, there are so many other characters we haven't touched in so many modes, and let's reconvene.
Yeah. Do you want to go ahead and kick it to plugs then, Kyria? You want to take it away?
Sure thing. you can find me on cohost at Kyrie Page. That is where I'm going to try and post a lot more often. And also, I have to use it a little bit more frequently, but there is a Scanline Media Tumblr that you can follow that I need to figure out things that I could do with, and that's scanlinemedia.tumblr.com.
Sounds good. You can find me on cohost at Sixdetmar, Sixdettmar. You can also find me at that address on Twitter. I am keeping my Twitter account around. I am checking it and answering DMs and promoting things sometimes. But if you want to actually see things from me, it's cohost. It's cohost these days. Yeah, it's a good idea to get out of Twitter.
Yeah. And if you want to support us getting out of Twitter.
Yeah. Patreon.com/Scanline Media. We would love your help. Until next time, folks. I'll say quarter up. I gotta think of a thing for this.
See you next round? I don't know. Wait, hold on.
Quarter up.
No.
Quarter down. Read on.
We'll figure it out later.
See you in the stars.
Oh my.
Spooky, scary skeletons.
Okay. See you.